Hey guys, tonight we're exploring what it was actually like to be Pharaoh of Egypt, a job that sounds impressive until you realize you're expected to be a living god who can't sneeze without three priests analyzing the theological implications. From having your bathroom breaks supervised by religious officials to marrying your sister because apparently genetic diversity is overrated, this is the story of history's most stressful divine management position. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up every morning to the realization that you are supposedly a god, which sounds amazing until you remember that gods don't get sick days, vacation time, or the luxury of having private thoughts. Your bedroom is filled with servants who have been watching you sleep because apparently even your dreams might contain divine messages that need to be interpreted by professionals with degrees in theological dream analysis. The first weird thing about being Pharaoh is that you can't just roll out of bed and stumble to the bathroom like a normal person. Your morning routine requires a team of specialists, including someone whose entire career revolves around making sure you wash your hands in the religiously appropriate manner. There's a specific prayer for face washing, a different chant for teeth cleaning, and definitely a ceremony for more private morning activities that we won't detail, but which definitely involved more witnesses than anyone would prefer. Getting dressed isn't just putting on clothes, it's a religious ceremony that takes longer than modern wedding preparations. Each piece of your outfit has symbolic meaning and must be put on in the correct order while priests recite prayers that essentially ask the gods to make sure your underwear doesn't accidentally cause the apocalypse. The crown alone requires 3 people to position correctly, and if it sits crooked, someone might interpret this as a sign that you're losing divine favor. Your breakfast isn't just a meal, it's an offering ceremony, where everything you eat has to be blessed, tasted by multiple people to make sure it's not poisoned, and presented on specific plates that correspond to various deities who apparently have strong opinions about ancient dinnerware. You can't just grab an apple and call it breakfast. That apple needs to be ceremonially approved by at least 2 priests and symbolically offered to 3 different gods. The really bizarre part is that everyone treats your most basic human functions as cosmic events. If you cough, scribes write it down as a possible omen. If you sneeze, someone consults the calendar to see if it aligns with favorable astronomical conditions. If you scratch an itch, a priest might interpret this as a divine message about agricultural policy or foreign relations. Privacy doesn't exist when you're supposedly divine. You can't take a walk without a procession of officials following behind you in case you accidentally step on something symbolically important or gesture in a way that might be misinterpreted as a new law. Every movement is potentially significant, every expression might be a divine communication, and every casual comment could become official policy if the wrong scribe happens to be taking notes. The marriage situation is particularly awkward because pharaohs are expected to marry within the royal family to keep the bloodline pure, which is ancient Egyptian code for genetically risky. Your wedding isn't a romantic celebration. It's a political necessity designed to prevent outsiders from gaining access to divine authority. Romance is optional, political stability is mandatory, and genetic counseling hasn't been invented yet. Marrying your sister isn't just weird, it's logistically complicated because you have to maintain the pretense that this is a normal, divinely approved arrangement while everyone pretends not to notice that your family tree looks more like a family wreath. Court protocols have to be carefully managed to avoid awkward situations where someone accidentally refers to your wife as your sister in front of foreign ambassadors who might not understand Egyptian royal customs. The religious obligations are absolutely exhausting. You're expected to perform daily rituals that honor dozens of different gods, each with specific requirements for proper worship. Morning prayers to Ra, midday offerings to Ptah, evening ceremonies for Osiris, and that's just the regular daily schedule. Special occasions require additional rituals that can last for days and involve costume changes that would make Broadway productions look simple. Every major decision you make has to be justified in religious terms because you can't just say, "I think this is a good idea." You have to explain how your decision maintains cosmic balance, honors the gods, and fulfills your divine mandate to keep the universe running smoothly. Want to build a new temple? That's not architecture. That's maintaining proper relationships with divine forces. Want to adjust tax rates? That's not economics. That's ensuring celestial harmony through fair distribution of earthly resources. The military aspects are equally bizarre because you're expected to lead armies into battle while wearing ceremonial gear that prioritizes symbolic importance over practical protection. Your battle armor includes enough gold and religious symbols to fund a small kingdom, making you the most expensive and spiritually significant target on any battlefield. Enemy forces probably aim for you specifically because defeating a living god makes better propaganda than just winning a regular military victory. Fighting wars as a divine pharaoh means you can't just retreat or surrender when things go badly because gods don't lose battles. They experience temporary setbacks that will be resolved through divine intervention and better tactical planning. If your army gets defeated, it's not military failure, it's a cosmic test that requires additional religious ceremonies and possibly some human sacrifices to restore divine favor. Court ceremonies are the most tedious part of being pharaoh because you have to attend countless events where you're essentially a living statue that occasionally nods approval or makes ceremonial gestures. Foreign ambassadors present tribute while you maintain divine composure, even when they're offering gifts that are obviously inferior to what Egypt could produce domestically. Domestic nobles perform elaborate rituals of submission that take hours and involve more bowing than a modern fitness class. The really exhausting part is that you have to look divinely pleased and spiritually engaged during ceremonies that are mind-numbingly boring. You can't yawn, fidget, or show any sign that you'd rather be anywhere else because divine beings don't experience boredom or physical discomfort. Your facial expression has to convey cosmic wisdom and benevolent authority even when someone is reading a 2-hour tribute poem about your magnificent sandals.
Eating in public is particularly weird because every meal becomes a religious performance where your food choices are interpreted as divine preferences that might influence agricultural policy. If you seem to enjoy the fish course, someone might decide this means the gods favor increased fishing operations. If you don't finish your vegetables, it could be interpreted as divine disapproval of the current harvest methods. The clothing requirements are absolutely ridiculous because you have to wear enough gold and precious stones to bankrupt small nations while maintaining the appearance that this weight doesn't bother you. The crown alone probably weighs more than modern safety helmets, and you're expected to wear it for hours during ceremonies without showing any sign of neck strain or headaches. Your daily schedule is determined by astronomical calculations and religious calendars, rather than practical convenience or personal preference. You can't just decide to sleep in or take an afternoon off. because the gods apparently operate on very strict timetables that require Pharaoh's participation at specific cosmic moments. Miss a sunrise ceremony, and you might accidentally disrupt the universe's daily renewal cycle. The economic responsibilities are staggering because you're personally accountable for Egypt's prosperity, which depends on Nile floods, agricultural yields, trade relationships, and weather patterns that you can't actually control, despite being supposedly divine. If the harvest fails, it's not bad weather, it's divine displeasure with your leadership. If trade revenues decline, it's not market forces, it's cosmic imbalance caused by insufficient royal devotion. Managing the priesthood is like trying to supervise a corporation where all the department heads have direct relationships with supernatural beings who outrank you in the cosmic hierarchy. Priests can claim divine inspiration for their recommendations, making it politically dangerous to disagree with their suggestions, even when they're obviously trying to increase their temple's budget allocations or expand their political influence. The priests also control access to divine knowledge and religious interpretation, which means they can essentially veto your decisions by declaring them theologically unsound. Want to implement new policies? Better make sure the high priests agree that your plans align with divine will, or you might face religious opposition that challenges your legitimacy as a god king. Foreign diplomacy is incredibly complex because you have to maintain divine authority while negotiating with rulers who don't necessarily accept your godhood as legitimate. Other kings treat you as an equal, which conflicts with your domestic identity as a divine being who supposedly outranks all mortal leaders. These diplomatic contradictions require careful protocol management to avoid international incidents or theological confusion. Letter writing with foreign rulers requires specialized scribes who understand how to address other kings respectfully without undermining your divine status at home. The language has to be diplomatic enough for international relations, but authoritative enough to maintain your religious credibility with Egyptian audiences who read these communications as evidence of your cosmic authority. The succession planning is nightmarishly complicated because you need to ensure that your chosen heir can credibly claim divine legitimacy while managing the political ambitions of other royal family members who might have their own divine aspirations. Brothers, uncles, and sons all potentially have claims to the throne, creating ongoing family drama that combines personal relationships with theological implications and political consequences. Training your heir involves teaching them not just practical leadership skills, but also how to embody divine authority convincingly enough to maintain social stability after your death. This educational process takes decades and requires careful management of public expectations about the continuity of divine kingship through human generations. Death preparation is particularly bizarre because you have to plan for an afterlife where you'll continue serving as Pharaoh in the divine realm, while also arranging for earthly succession that maintains cosmic order among the living. Your tomb construction becomes a decades-long project that consumes enormous resources while you're still alive to supervise the work and make sure it meets divine specifications. The mummification preparations involve detailed discussions about preserving your divine body for eternal use while coordinating with embalmers who treat your corpse as a sacred object that requires special handling procedures. You essentially have to plan your own funeral, while making sure it reflects appropriate divine dignity and political continuity. Medical care is complicated because you're not supposed to get sick in ways that suggest divine weakness, but you also can't ignore health problems that might affect your ability to perform royal duties. Palace physicians have to treat your ailments discreetly while maintaining the public fiction that gods don't experience ordinary human medical issues like indigestion or headaches. When you do get sick, it has to be explained in religious terms that don't undermine your divine credentials. Illnesses become temporary tests of faith or cosmic challenges that demonstrate divine strength rather than evidence of ordinary mortal vulnerability. Recovery requires both medical treatment and religious ceremonies that restore your public image as an invulnerable divine being. Personal relationships are nearly impossible because everyone who interacts with you has political or religious motivations that prevent genuine friendship or casual conversation. Servants fear making mistakes that might be interpreted as disrespect for divine authority. Nobles want favors and political advancement. Priests seek religious influence and institutional support. Nobody just wants to chat about the weather without ulterior motives. Even your family relationships are complicated by the political implications of royal favoritism and succession planning. Your children know that their relationships with you might determine their future status and survival if political circumstances change. Your wives understand that their influence depends on maintaining your approval and outmaneuvering other royal women who compete for attention and resources. Leisure activities don't really exist because everything you do becomes a public statement about divine preferences and royal priorities. If you enjoy hunting, it has to be presented as demonstrating Pharaoh's mastery over nature and wild animals. If you like music, it becomes evidence of your appreciation for cosmic harmony and cultural sophistication. You can't just have hobbies. You have divine interests with theological significance. Travel requires enormous logistical planning because moving a living God involves not just transporting your person, but the entire ceremonial apparatus needed to maintain divine dignity in unfamiliar locations. Every journey becomes a royal progress that demonstrates Pharaoh's magnificence while draining the royal treasury and disrupting normal activities wherever you go.
The inspection tours of your kingdom require careful choreography to ensure that you see evidence of prosperity and loyalty rather than problems that might suggest divine leadership failures. Local officials spend weeks preparing for royal visits, creating temporary displays of success that might not reflect actual conditions, but which preserve the fiction of divine effectiveness. Architectural projects become monuments to your divine authority, but also enormous financial burdens that consume resources for decades, while providing employment for thousands of workers whose livelihoods depend on continued royal construction programs. You can't just build practical structures. Everything has to demonstrate divine magnificence and eternal significance. The psychological pressure of maintaining divine composure constantly is absolutely exhausting because you can never relax, show weakness, express doubt, or admit mistakes without potentially undermining the entire religious and political system that depends on Pharaoh's divine legitimacy. Every public appearance requires performing godhood convincingly enough to maintain social stability and political authority. Sleep itself becomes problematic because you have to rest while maintaining divine dignity, which means your bedchamber is monitored by guards and servants who watch for signs of divine dreams or messages that might require interpretation. You can't just sleep peacefully, you have to sleep in ways that preserve royal mystique and theological credibility. Even your dreams are considered public property because they might contain divine revelations about future events or guidance for kingdom management. Court officials analyze your sleep patterns and dream reports for political and religious significance, making rest itself another form of royal duty rather than personal restoration. The aging process is particularly difficult because you have to maintain divine authority while experiencing physical decline that suggests mortal vulnerability. Gray hair, wrinkles, and reduced energy have to be managed carefully to preserve the public image of eternal divine vigor that supports political legitimacy and religious credibility. Retirement isn't an option because gods don't step down from cosmic responsibilities, they transition to different forms of divine service through death and deification. You can't just decide you're tired of being Pharaoh and want to pursue other interests because divine kingship is supposedly an eternal calling rather than a temporary job. The legacy pressure is enormous because your reign will be evaluated not just for political and economic success, but also for maintaining cosmic order and divine favor that affects Egypt's eternal relationship with supernatural forces. Failure isn't just personal disappointment, it's theological catastrophe that might endanger the entire kingdom's spiritual security. Record-keeping becomes crucial because scribes document everything you do as evidence of divine activity that might be studied by future generations seeking to understand proper pharaonic behavior. Your casual comments become historical documents. Your personal preferences become royal precedents, and your mistakes become cautionary tales about divine leadership challenges. The bizarre thing about being Pharaoh is that the job combines ultimate political authority with complete personal sacrifice, absolute power with total public scrutiny, and divine status with human vulnerability. You rule millions of people while having less personal freedom than ordinary citizens who can at least sneeze without theological analysis. And yet, despite all the weirdness and pressure and isolation, the role of Pharaoh continued for thousands of years because it provided social stability and cultural continuity that benefited Egyptian civilization even when it made individual rulers miserable. The system worked for Egypt, even if it was absolutely exhausting for the people who had to embody divine kingship. As you finally settle into sleep at the end of another day of being a living god with bathroom supervision, ceremonial clothing requirements, and the constant pressure of maintaining cosmic order through personal perfection, there's a strange comfort in knowing that tomorrow will bring more of the same bizarre responsibilities that define the world's most uncomfortable job. The palace settles into its nighttime routine of guards patrolling corridors, servants preparing for tomorrow's ceremonies, and scribes recording the day's divine activities for historical posterity. Even your sleep becomes part of the royal record, documented as evidence of Pharaoh's continued existence and divine presence in the palace. And in the quiet darkness of your heavily monitored royal bedchamber, surrounded by the constant attention of people whose lives depend on your successful performance of godhood, there is finally a few hours of relative peace before tomorrow brings another day of being weird, wonderful, and absolutely exhausting divine ruler of ancient Egypt. The gentle sounds of nighttime palace activity create a familiar lullaby of security and purpose. The quiet efficiency of people whose work supports your impossible job of being simultaneously human and divine, mortal and eternal, individual and institution, person and symbol of cosmic order that somehow manages to keep one of history's greatest civilizations functioning smoothly despite the inherent absurdities of the whole arrangement. And maybe, just maybe, in the peaceful darkness between waking and sleeping, you can briefly forget about being a god and just be a person who's very, very tired from the strangest job in the ancient world.
Welcome back to our quiet journey through history's most carefully guarded moments. Tonight we're stepping away from monumental construction and golden ceremonies to explore the most intimate secrets of ancient Egypt, the daily life of those who served the pharaoh's most private needs. From dressing a living god who sometimes forgot to tie his own sandals, to monitoring the health of someone whose every sneeze could signal cosmic disaster, this is the story of the servants who knew that behind the divine facade lived a young man who needed help with the most human of daily tasks. So settle into your most comfortable position. You wake in the pre-dawn darkness as the pharaoh's personal body servant, one of only a handful of people who will see the living god Horus before he becomes the public face of Egyptian divine power. Welcome to your life in the most intimate chamber of the royal palace, circa 1323 BCE, where your job is to transform young Tutankhamun from a sleepy teenager into the flawless embodiment of cosmic order, and to do it so seamlessly that no one suspects how much help divinity actually requires. The pre-dawn air in the royal bedchamber carries the faint scent of myrrh and lotus oil, mixed with the very human smell of someone who's been sleeping deeply under linen covers. You move quietly through the darkness, your bare feet silent on cool stone floors, approaching the golden bed where Egypt's divine ruler lies curled up like any other 19-year-old who stayed up too late the night before reviewing tax scrolls. The scale of your responsibility is quietly overwhelming. This isn't just personal service, you're maintaining the divine illusion that keeps 3 million Egyptians confident that their universe is stable and their harvests secure. Every morning, you help transform a young man with bed-tangled hair and morning breath into a god whose perfect appearance reassures the kingdom that cosmic order prevails. But here's the thing nobody tells you about serving a living deity. Gods, it turns out, are remarkably human when they first wake up. They mumble, they squint at bright lights, and they sometimes need 3 attempts to remember which sandal goes on which foot. Your job is to manage these very mortal moments with such discretion that the illusion of divinity never cracks, not even for an instant. Your morning routine begins with the careful observation that has become second nature after years of intimate service. You check the pharaoh's breathing, note the color of his skin in the dim lamplight, and listen for any signs of congestion or distress that might indicate the beginning of illness, because when gods get sick, the entire kingdom panics. The pharaoh's sleep patterns tell you everything about his state of mind and health. Restful sleep with steady breathing indicates good spiritual balance. Tossing and turning suggests either physical discomfort or the wake of royal decisions keeping his mind active. Talking in his sleep, which happens more often than you'd expect, sometimes reveals worries about kingdom management that he won't discuss with his advisors. You've learned to read the subtle signs that indicate what kind of day this will be. If he wakes naturally just before dawn, stretching like a cat and greeting you with a smile, it will be a good day for public appearances and important decisions. If he needs gentle coaxing to wake and seems reluctant to leave the warmth of his bed, you'll need to schedule lighter activities and ensure his afternoon rest period is protected. The morning washing ritual requires water heated to exactly the right temperature, warm enough to be pleasant, but not so hot that it reddens his skin before public appearances. You test each vessel with your elbow, a technique learned from years of experience with a young pharaoh who once jumped out of a bath because the water was too cold, leading to a very undignified scramble for towels and considerable damage to royal dignity. The pharaoh's skin requires daily inspection for any marks, rashes, or blemishes that might indicate health problems or require cosmetic coverage before public ceremonies. You've become expert at distinguishing between harmless skin variations and symptoms that need immediate attention from the royal physicians, because overlooking a potentially serious condition could have consequences for the entire kingdom. Bathing a living god involves more than cleanliness. It's a daily ritual of renewal that prepares the pharaoh spiritually as well as physically for his divine duties. The water is blessed by temple priests, the oils are sacred formulations that protect against both earthly diseases and spiritual contamination, and the timing follows astronomical calculations that align the cleansing with favorable celestial influences. You've learned to manage the pharaoh's modesty with practiced discretion, maintaining the careful balance between necessary intimate care and respect for royal dignity. Even gods, you've discovered, can feel self-conscious about physical imperfections or the awkwardness of needing help with basic personal tasks that other young men manage independently. Hair care for the divine pharaoh requires understanding both practical grooming techniques and the symbolic significance of different hairstyles for different occasions. The morning hair routine varies depending on the day's scheduled activities, from simple cleanliness for private study sessions to elaborate styling for state ceremonies where every curl must be perfect. The pharaoh's natural hair, you know better than anyone, is actually rather thin and requires careful management to create the full, healthy appearance expected of divine rulers. You've become expert with hair oils, strategic brushing techniques, and the diplomatic use of supplementary hair pieces that enhance his natural endowment without making the assistance too obvious. Dental care presents unique challenges when your patient is a living god, who can't be seen with imperfect teeth, but also can't be subjected to the painful dental procedures available in ancient Egypt. You've developed gentle cleaning techniques using softened reeds and mild abrasives that maintain oral health while avoiding the dramatic interventions that might affect his appearance or comfort. The pharaoh's breath requires daily attention, not just for personal comfort, but because close conversations with officials and foreign diplomats are part of royal duties. You prepare special mouth rinses using mint, myrrh, and other aromatic herbs that ensure his breath is always fresh and pleasant during public interactions.
Cosmetic application transforms the young pharaoh from human to divine appearance, but the process requires artistic skill and understanding of color theory that took years to master. The kohl around his eyes must be perfectly symmetrical. The lip color must enhance his natural coloring without looking artificial, and the overall effect must suggest divine radiance rather than obvious makeup. You've learned to read the pharaoh's moods during the cosmetic application process. Some mornings he enjoys the pampering and relaxes into the careful attention. Other days he's impatient with the time required and needs gentle distraction with conversation about the day's activities or amusing palace gossip to keep him still long enough to complete the necessary grooming. Clothing selection involves more than fashion. Each garment carries symbolic meaning and must be appropriate for the day's activities while maintaining the visual standards of divine perfection. The morning consultation about clothing
often reveals the pharaoh's concerns about upcoming events and his confidence level for handling various royal responsibilities. Dressing a pharaoh requires understanding the complex layering of royal garments and the proper sequence for putting them on. The ceremonial regalia is heavy, uncomfortable, and requires careful adjustment to ensure both proper appearance and physical comfort during long public ceremonies. You've learned to make minor alterations and adjustments that improve comfort without compromising the required symbolic elements. The pharaoh's jewelry and regalia tell stories about his mood and energy levels. On days when he feels confident and strong, he welcomes the weight of golden collars and elaborate headdresses. When he's tired or stressed, he needs encouragement to wear the full complement of royal symbols that demonstrate his divine authority to the people who depend on visual confirmation of his godly status. Throughout the dressing process, you observe and mental catalog any physical changes that might indicate health issues requiring attention. Weight gain or loss, skin color variations, unusual fatigue, or changes in posture all provide information about the pharaoh's overall well-being that needs to be reported to royal physicians with appropriate discretion and medical accuracy. Breakfast service involves more than nutrition. It's an opportunity to assess the pharaoh's appetite, mood, and mental alertness for the day ahead. You note what he eats eagerly, what he picks at without interest, and what he refuses entirely, because changes in eating patterns often signal either physical illness or emotional stress that needs management. The pharaoh's table manners, you've learned, are not naturally divine. Eating gracefully while wearing elaborate jewelry and maintaining royal dignity requires practice and occasional gentle reminders about proper technique. You've developed subtle signals to indicate when food is stuck in his teeth or when his eating pace needs adjustment for the timing of morning activities. Meal conversation provides opportunities to assess the pharaoh's mental state and prepare him emotionally for challenging aspects of the day's schedule. You've learned to introduce difficult topics gradually and gauge his readiness to handle various royal responsibilities based on his responses to casual morning discussion. The transition from private morning routine to public royal duties requires careful management of the pharaoh's transformation from human to divine persona. You observe the subtle changes in his posture, voice, and facial expression as he prepares to assume the public role that Egypt expects from its living God. Throughout the morning's preparation, you maintain mental notes about everything you've observed: physical condition, emotional state, concerns expressed, and any unusual behaviors that might need attention or accommodation in the day's activities. This information never leaves the private quarters, but it guides your efforts to provide optimal support for royal duties. The pharaoh's private study time reveals his intellectual interests and capabilities beyond the public requirements of kingship. You observe his reading preferences, his attention span for different subjects, and his genuine enthusiasm for various aspects of royal education, providing insights into his personality that no one else in the kingdom is permitted to see. During private tutoring sessions, you witness the pharaoh's struggles with difficult concepts and his genuine efforts to master the complex knowledge required for effective rule. These moments reveal his humanity most clearly. The frustration with mathematics, the excitement about military strategy, the boredom with certain ceremonial protocols that he nevertheless needs to master for public performances. The pharaoh's correspondence handling provides glimpses into his personal relationships and private concerns about kingdom management. You observe his reactions to different types of messages and his emotional responses to news from various sources, information that helps you anticipate his needs for emotional support or practical assistance. Midday rest periods offer opportunities to observe the pharaoh's sleep patterns and stress levels during daylight hours. His ability to relax and rest deeply indicates good emotional balance, while restless napping suggests concerns that might need addressing through conversation or adjustments to his schedule. The afternoon grooming session provides another checkpoint for assessing the Pharaoh's condition and making any adjustments needed for evening activities. You note any changes in skin condition, fatigue levels, or mood that have developed during the day's public duties and make appropriate accommodations. The evening meal service reveals how the day's activities have affected the Pharaoh's physical and emotional state. His appetite, conversation topics, and energy levels provide information about his overall well-being and readiness for evening responsibilities or need for quiet recovery time. The Pharaoh's evening entertainment preferences reflect his mood and stress levels. Some evenings he enjoys music and storytelling that provide relaxation and distraction. Other times he prefers quiet activities or private conversation that help him process the day's challenges and prepare mentally for tomorrow's requirements.
Personal hygiene before sleep requires the same careful attention as morning preparation, ensuring the Pharaoh's comfort throughout the night and readiness for the next day's duties. The evening routine also provides opportunities for private conversation about any concerns or worries that need addressing before sleep. Bedtime preparation involves more than physical comfort. It includes creating the emotional and spiritual conditions that promote restorative sleep for someone whose rest is essential for kingdom stability. You adjust lighting, arrange comfortable bedding, and ensure the sleeping environment supports both physical relaxation and peaceful dreams. The Pharaoh's private prayers and meditation before sleep reveal his personal relationship with the divine forces he represents publicly. These intimate spiritual moments show his genuine religious feelings and personal concerns about his ability to fulfill the cosmic responsibilities of pharaonic rule. Night care duties continue even after the Pharaoh falls asleep, with periodic checks to ensure his comfort and safety throughout the sleeping hours. You monitor his breathing, adjust bedding as needed, and maintain the optimal environment for restorative rest that will prepare him for another day of divine duties. The Pharaoh's sleep-talking, when it occurs, sometimes reveals subconscious concerns about royal responsibilities or personal relationships that don't surface during waking hours. These glimpses into his dream life provide additional insights into his psychological state and areas where he might need extra support or guidance. Throughout your service, you maintain the absolute discretion that makes intimate royal service possible. The trust placed in you extends beyond personal care to emotional support and the preservation of royal dignity through the careful management of information that could damage the divine image essential for kingdom stability. Your relationship with the Pharaoh develops over years of intimate daily contact into something resembling friendship, though always bounded by the requirements of royal protocol and the need to maintain proper hierarchical relationships. You become confidant, caretaker, and witness to the private humanity of someone the rest of the world sees only as a divine ruler. The emotional burden of maintaining royal secrets while providing personal care requires its own form of strength and wisdom. You learn to compartmentalize information, offer support without overstepping boundaries, and maintain loyalty to both the person and the institution of pharaohic rule. Your expertise in reading the Pharaoh's moods and needs makes you an essential part of the palace support system. though your contributions remain invisible to everyone outside the immediate royal household. The skills you develop in observation, discretion, and personal care represent a unique form of professional excellence that few people ever fully understand or appreciate. The daily routine of intimate royal service creates its own rhythms and satisfactions as you perfect the art of anticipating needs, managing challenges, and providing the kind of comprehensive personal support that allows a young man to successfully fulfill the enormous responsibilities of divine kingship. As years of service accumulate, you develop deep understanding of the Pharaoh's character, capabilities, and growth as both a person and a ruler. You witness his development from uncertain youth to confident leader, observing the gradual mastery of skills and knowledge that transform him into an effective pharaoh. Your role in this transformation, though private and unrecognized, provides the stable foundation of personal care and emotional support that enables the pharaoh to focus his energy on the public duties and royal responsibilities that define his reign and impact the lives of millions of Egyptians. The trust and intimacy of your service creates a unique perspective on power, divinity, and human nature that few people in history have been privileged to experience. You understand both the burden and the isolation of absolute authority, as well as the very human needs that persist regardless of divine status. Evening reflection on the day's service provides opportunities to evaluate your effectiveness and plan improvements for tomorrow's care. The constant goal of seamless, invisible support requires ongoing attention to detail and continuous refinement of techniques and observations. As the pharaoh settles into peaceful sleep, surrounded by the careful arrangements you've made for his comfort and safety, you can rest knowing that you've contributed to the successful maintenance of divine rule through the most personal and intimate forms of service possible. The night air carries the familiar sounds of the palace at rest: distant fountain water, the soft footsteps of night guards, and the gentle breathing of Egypt's sleeping ruler. Your day of service ends as quietly as it began, with the satisfaction of duties performed with skill, discretion, and unwavering loyalty. Tonight, as you prepare for your own rest, you can reflect on the unique privilege of serving as keeper of divine secrets, witness to royal humanity, and guardian of the intimate details that make godly rule possible in a world that depends on the illusion of divine perfection. The gentle sounds of the sleeping palace create a peaceful atmosphere that acknowledges the successful completion of another day's service in the most trusted and confidential position in the ancient world. And in the quiet Egyptian night, filled with the whispered prayers of loyal servants and the soft rustle of linen bedding around a sleeping god, we can rest knowing that some forms of service are so intimate and essential, they become sacred acts of devotion, performed with loving care for the person behind the divine facade. The eternal palace holds its secrets in gentle darkness, the private chambers echoing with the quiet sounds of devoted service and the timeless understanding that even gods need human care, tenderness, and the kind of loyal attention that transforms daily routines into acts of sacred trust, one careful, discrete moment at a time. And as sleep comes to both servant and Pharaoh alike, the palace rests in the knowledge that divine rule continues through the patient, loving service of those who understand that the greatest secrets are often the most human ones, preserved through absolute loyalty and tender care that asks for no recognition beyond the quiet satisfaction of service perfectly performed.
Welcome back to the most intimate chambers of ancient Egypt's royal palace. Tonight, we continue our journey into the closely guarded secrets of pharaonic life as we follow the royal physician through the quiet hours of night, watch over the sleeping god king. From monitoring the pulse that keeps Egypt's cosmic order stable, to preparing remedies for ailments that cannot be allowed to exist in a divine ruler, this is the story of the man who holds the pharaoh's mortal life in his hands, while the kingdom sleeps peacefully, unaware that their god sometimes suffers from very human frailties. We're about to spend the next 30 minutes in the most quietly intense vigil in the ancient world. You wake at the second hour past midnight as Egypt's chief royal physician, summoned not by crisis but by the sacred duty that has governed your nights for the past 3 years of service to the living god Tutankhamun. Welcome to your life in the shadows of divine power, where your medical knowledge guards the most dangerous secret in Egypt, that pharaohs, despite their godly status, are as vulnerable to illness and injury as any mortal man. The palace corridors at this hour carry a different energy than the busy daytime atmosphere. Your sandaled feet move silently over cool stone floors, past sleeping guards and darkened chambers, toward the royal quarters where your patient rests under your careful protection. The oil lamp in your hand casts moving shadows that dance across walls decorated with images of eternal health and divine protection, an ironic contrast to your very human mission of monitoring mortal vulnerabilities. The weight of your medical bag reminds you of the tools and remedies you've prepared for any emergency that might arise during the night hours. This isn't just a routine check. You're the barrier between the pharaoh's hidden frailties and the cosmic disaster that would follow if Egypt discovered their god king suffers from the same ailments that plague ordinary humans. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you about being a royal physician. Your medical knowledge must be absolutely perfect while remaining completely invisible. You can't publish case studies about treating divine headaches, can't consult colleagues about recurring symptoms in god kings, and can't even maintain written records that might someday reveal the carefully guarded truth about pharaonic mortality. Your approach to the royal bedroom requires the kind of stealth that comes from years of practice in medical observation without disturbance. The door opens silently on well-oiled hinges, and you slip inside to begin the night's most delicate work, monitoring the health of someone whose every symptom must be interpreted, treated, and concealed with equal skill and discretion. The pharaoh's sleeping form in the dim lamplight reveals more about his condition than any daytime examination could provide. Sleep strips away the conscious control that helps him maintain his divine composure, exposing the subtle signs of discomfort, tension, or illness that he successfully hides during waking hours. Your first observation focuses on his breathing pattern, the rhythm, depth, and regularity that indicate whether the respiratory ailment you've been monitoring is improving or requires adjustment in tonight's treatment. The young pharaoh's lungs, you know better than anyone, carry the scarring from a childhood illness that occasionally flares into episodes of labored breathing that must be carefully managed without alerting the palace to any sign of weakness. The breathing tonight is slightly irregular,
with occasional shallow catches that suggest the beginning of another episode. You make mental notes about the timing and severity while preparing the herbal inhalation that will ease his airways without waking him from necessary rest. Moving closer, you check his skin temperature with the back of your hand against his forehead, a technique that years of practice have made sensitive enough to detect the subtle fever that sometimes accompanies his breathing difficulties. The skin is warm but not dangerously hot, indicating that immediate intervention may prevent the development of a more serious episode. The Pharaoh's pulse, felt carefully at his wrist, tells the story of his body's current struggle with the chronic condition that you've been treating with a combination of herbal remedies and dietary adjustments. The rhythm is slightly rapid, consistent with the early stages of respiratory distress that requires your most subtle and effective interventions. You prepare the first of tonight's treatments using techniques passed down through generations of Egyptian physicians and refined through your own experience with the unique challenges of treating a patient whose illness cannot be acknowledged. The herbal mixture combines ingredients known for their lung-clearing properties with others chosen for their ability to work without producing obvious symptoms of medical treatment. The preparation of medicines in the royal quarters requires absolute silence and the kind of efficiency that comes from years of practice in midnight interventions. Every tool has its designated place. Every ingredient is measured by touch in the darkness, and every procedure is performed with the smoothness that prevents any disturbance to the Pharaoh's sleep or alert to palace guards that medical treatment is occurring. The inhalation treatment involves lighting a small charcoal brazier and adding the herbal mixture that will release therapeutic vapors into the air around the Pharaoh's bed. The timing must be perfect, long enough to be effective, but not so long that the unusual scent alerts morning servants to the night's medical activities. As the gentle medicinal smoke begins to fill the chamber, you observe the gradual easing of the Pharaoh's breathing difficulties. His chest movements become deeper and more regular, and the tension around his closed eyes begins to relax as the herbal treatment provides the relief he needs to continue restorative sleep. Your medical training includes not just treatment techniques, but also the careful observation skills that allow you to read the subtle signs of improvement or deterioration in conditions that must be managed in complete secrecy.
The Pharaoh's color is better, his breathing easier, and his overall posture more relaxed as the treatment takes effect. While the inhalation treatment continues, you turn your attention to other aspects of the Pharaoh's health that require nightly monitoring. The chronic digestive problems that affect his appetite and energy levels need assessment and potential adjustment of the dietary recommendations you've provided to the royal kitchen staff under the guise of general health maintenance. The Pharaoh's sleep position reveals information about areas of physical discomfort that might indicate the progression of old injuries or the development of new problems. A riding accident from 6 months ago left him with periodic back pain that he refuses to acknowledge during daylight hours, but that affects his sleep quality and requires ongoing management through carefully disguised treatments. You check for signs of the joint inflammation that occasionally flares in response to weather changes or physical stress from royal duties. The condition is manageable with proper treatment, but it must be monitored carefully to prevent episodes that might become visible to the palace community during important ceremonial functions. The skin examination, conducted by lamplight with practiced discretion, reveals the current status of several minor but persistent conditions that require ongoing attention. A patch of irritated skin behind his left ear needs the application of soothing oil, while a small cut on his hand requires cleaning and protective treatment to prevent infection. These minor medical needs, insignificant in an ordinary person, take on enormous importance when your patient is a pharaoh whose perfect appearance is essential for maintaining public confidence in divine rule. Every mark, every sign of physical imperfection must be carefully managed to preserve the illusion of godly perfection. The eye examination, performed with gentle manipulation of the eyelids while the pharaoh sleeps, checks for signs of the recurring eye irritation that sometimes affects his vision and requires treatment with specially prepared eye drops. The condition is mild but persistent, and untreated episodes could affect his performance during public ceremonies where sharp vision is essential. Preparing the eye treatment requires the most delicate technique. Applying medicated drops without waking the patient or leaving obvious traces of medical intervention that might be noticed by mourning servants. The treatment is effective, but must be administered with perfect timing and skill to avoid detection while providing necessary relief. Your examination extends to checking the pharaoh's hands and arms for any new injuries or developing problems that might indicate changes in his physical condition or activities that could affect his health. The calluses from sword practice need monitoring to prevent infection, while muscle tension in his shoulders suggests the need for a therapeutic massage that can be administered under the guise of routine royal pampering. The assessment of his overall physical condition requires integration of all your observations into a comprehensive understanding of his current health status and potential needs for adjustment in his treatment regimen. Tonight's findings suggest that the respiratory condition requires increased vigilance, while other chronic issues remain stable under current management. Medication preparation for the remainder of the night involves calculating dosages and timing for treatments that will provide optimal benefit while remaining undetectable. The pharaoh's weight, current symptoms, and response to previous treatments all factor into decisions about which remedies to use and when to administer them. The herbal pharmacy you maintain in a concealed cabinet within the royal chambers contains carefully selected remedies for the various conditions you monitor and treat. Each preparation is labeled with coded symbols that disguise their medical purpose while allowing you to quickly identify and access needed treatments during emergency situations. Quality control for your medications requires constant attention to freshness, potency, and proper storage conditions that maintain effectiveness over time. Herbal remedies lose their therapeutic properties if not properly preserved, and ineffective treatments could prove catastrophic if needed during a serious episode. The second major assessment of the night focuses on the pharaoh's neurological condition, checking for any signs of the recurring headaches that sometimes affect his ability to concentrate during complex royal duties. These episodes, possibly related to the old head injury from a childhood accident, require careful monitoring and preemptive treatment to prevent debilitating attacks. Checking for headache symptoms in a sleeping patient requires subtle observation of facial muscle tension, frowning patterns, and head positioning that might indicate discomfort. Tonight shows mild signs of developing tension that suggest the need for preventative treatment before the condition progresses to a painful episode. The headache prevention treatment involves the careful application of diluted essential oil to specific pressure points on the pharaoh's temples and forehead. The technique must be gentle enough not to wake him while being thorough enough to provide the therapeutic benefit that will prevent morning discomfort. Pain management for a pharaoh presents unique challenges because effective treatments often produce observable side effects that could raise questions about his health. The remedies you use must provide relief while maintaining the appearance of perfect divine health that the kingdom expects from their God King. Mental health assessment forms another crucial component of your nightly evaluation. The enormous pressure of royal responsibilities affects the young pharaoh's emotional state, and signs of stress or anxiety require attention before they impact his physical health or his ability to perform royal duties effectively. Sleep quality indicators provide valuable information about the pharaoh's psychological condition. Peaceful, deep sleep suggests good emotional balance, while restless sleep patterns indicate stress or worry that might need addressing through conversation or adjustments to his daily schedule and responsibilities.
The pharaoh's dreams, when they cause observable reactions during sleep, sometimes reveal concerns or fears that he doesn't express during waking hours. Tonight, he seems peaceful, with only occasional slight movements that suggest normal dream activity rather than anxiety-driven disturbances. Nutritional assessment, based on physical observation, helps you evaluate whether dietary recommendations are being followed and producing desired results. The pharaoh's muscle tone, skin condition, and overall appearance reflect the effectiveness of nutritional interventions designed to support his health while accommodating his preferences and royal dietary requirements. Weight management for a young pharaoh involves balancing adequate nutrition for growth and energy with the physical standards expected of divine rulers. Too thin suggests illness, while weight gain might indicate inactivity or other health problems that require investigation and treatment. The third hour of night watch involves preparation of the morning medications that will help the pharaoh begin his day with optimal energy and comfort. These treatments must be administered before his morning servants arrive and integrated seamlessly into his normal waking routine. Morning medication timing requires coordination with the pharaoh's natural sleep cycles and his scheduled activities for the coming day. Treatments that cause drowsiness must be avoided on days with important ceremonies, while energy-supporting remedies are essential before demanding physical or mental activities. The concealment of medical activities requires constant vigilance and creative solutions for disguising treatments as normal palace routines. Therapeutic baths become luxury relaxation. Medicinal teas are presented as exotic beverages, and massage therapy is disguised as royal pampering rather than medical necessity. Emergency preparedness forms a constant backdrop for your night duties. You must be ready to respond immediately to any serious medical crisis, while having contingency plans for concealing or explaining any dramatic interventions that might be required to save the pharaoh's life. The emergency medication kit contains the most potent remedies in your arsenal, treatments that could mean the difference between life and death in crisis situations. These medications require careful storage and regular replacement to ensure effectiveness, when seconds could determine the fate of both pharaoh and kingdom. Communication protocols for medical emergencies must balance the need for rapid response with the requirements of royal secrecy and the preservation of divine image. You have developed coded signals and discrete methods for summoning assistance without alerting the entire palace to medical crisis. As the night progresses toward dawn, your final assessments focus on the pharaoh's readiness for the coming day's activities and any adjustments needed to his treatment plan. The respiratory episode has resolved successfully, and other chronic conditions remain stable under your careful management. Documentation of the night's observations must be coded and concealed in ways that preserve medical information while protecting royal secrets. Your records use symbols and abbreviated notations that would be meaningless to anyone lacking your specific medical knowledge and understanding of the coding system. The successful completion of another night's medical vigilance provides satisfaction that comes from protecting both a young man's health and a kingdom's stability. Your invisible work enables the pharaoh to meet his royal obligations while managing the health challenges that could otherwise compromise his ability to rule. As the first hints of dawn begin to lighten the eastern windows, you prepare to withdraw from the royal chambers before the morning servants arrive. All evidence of medical intervention must be removed or disguised, leaving only a peacefully sleeping Pharaoh who will wake refreshed and ready for another day of divine leadership. The transition from night watch to morning routine requires careful timing and coordination with the palace staff who will take over the Pharaoh's care. Your night's work must remain invisible, while its benefits enhance his ability to perform the royal duties that define his reign. The Pharaoh's improved breathing and peaceful sleep position indicate that tonight's treatments have been successful in managing his symptoms and preparing him for the demands of another day as Egypt's ruler. The respiratory crisis has been averted, chronic conditions remain controlled, and his overall health status supports continued effective leadership. As you gather your medical supplies and prepare to leave the royal chambers, you reflect on the unique privilege and burden of serving as guardian of divine health in a world that cannot acknowledge that gods sometimes need doctors. The gentle morning light reveals a peaceful scene of successful medical care disguised as natural sleep, with no evidence remaining of the night's vigilant attention to health problems that must remain forever secret while being perfectly managed. Tonight's watch ends as it began, with quiet satisfaction in duties performed with skill and discretion, protecting the health of a young ruler whose well-being determines the stability and prosperity of an entire civilization. The palace begins to stir with the approaching dawn, unaware that their pharaoh's health has been carefully guarded through the night hours by medical expertise that operates in the shadows of divine power, ensuring that godly rule continues uninterrupted by mortal frailties. And in the peaceful Egyptian dawn, with its promise of another day of stable rule and cosmic order, we can rest knowing that some forms of care are so essential they become sacred trusts, performed in darkness and silence for the protection of both individual health and collective faith. One careful, invisible treatment at a time.